This is a reading from the Good News according to Matthew. This gospel, as I said in Mass, is a very interesting, almost a unique gospel in the stories of Sundays. It's about a very strong, feisty woman challenging Jesus about his, almost saying that he's narrow-minded. And he comes away chagrined. Oh, no, that's probably not the word, but anyway. He comes away with a wider sense of what's happening. Let me read it to you. Jesus went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman from the region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But he did not answer her at all. And his disciples came to him and urged him, saying, "Send her away. She keeps shouting after us." Jesus answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But the woman came and knelt before him and said, "Lord, help me." He answered, "It's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." Whoa. She said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table." And Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
This morning I would like to share a pretty long story with you. I hear you groan. But one that means a great deal to me, so I'm a bit self-indulgent. About 40 years ago, on a Thursday before Easter, I took an 8-hour trip on a bus in the United States. It was 8 hours through the night from North Carolina down to Florida. And the prize on a long bus trip, as any of you commuters might know, is to find a vacant double seat. Something to stretch out on. It was going to be a long night. And I wasn't in the form of mood of having a companion, so I stretched myself out, and about arriving 15 minutes early for the bus, it was pretty full. It was full of Afro-Americans, in fact. But I found a double seat down the back of the bus. I spread myself out, the great Australian sprawl, you know, occupying both seats. Got my luggage there. I'd occupied the country. The bus was about to leave. The driver took his seat, he hit the ignition, the doors hissed close, and we were off. I'd won. Next stop, Fort Augustine in Florida. But wait, someone banged on the door. And a young, lanky American, Caucasian, was banging on the door that he still wanted to get on. So he joined the bus, walked right down the bus, ignoring every option that he had of sitting in another seat. He stood above me and he says, "Is that seat free, sir?" Well, I was about as gracious as a 2-year-old having to give up his toy. I didn't cry, but I reluctantly moved my luggage from the seat and he sat down. Zeke, that was his name, was from the rural hills of West Virginia. Now, if you don't know that part of the United States, it's wild. I mean, we call them hillbillies. I suppose that's racist, but oh my God, it's accurate. It's he asked me where I came from. So, thinking this was going to be a long trip, I thought I'd make a little bit of a quiz of it. And I said to Zeke, okay, Zeke, you tell me where I'm from. I'll keep talking, and you tell me where I'm from. Well, Zeke thought long and hard. There was a big pause. He had a wrinkled brow. He studied me carefully in the dark of this bus. And after a long pause, he said, oh, it's a long, long way away. I said, yeah, it is, Zeke. Yeah, quite right. Where am I from? And after another long pause, he said, Rhode Island. I said, no, Zeke, no cigar. Rhode Island was about the outer limit of his imagination. His story, he had little schooling, he had a large family, they lived on welfare, he owned a lot of guns, he was terrified of blacks. That's why he sought out a seat next to me. His area, of course, would be full of signs, Trump for 2020. This is really heartland land here in the United States. As the long night unfolded, Zeke opened up his bag and took out his one sandwich. It was roughly wrapped in what we used to call grease-proof paper. I don't suppose it's around anymore. And he opened it up and he offered me half his sandwich. Every note of hesitation and caution and hygiene and my delicate stomach, and it was dark, said to me, don't take it. But the young stranger was sharing his food with me, and I couldn't resist it. So I took half the sandwich. We spent a long, sleepless night sharing stories. I can't recall any moment in my life when my mind, my imagination, my perspective, my lazy assumptions about other people were wrenched open as wide as that night with that young stranger. He changed my mind. Here I was, a little Lane Cove boy from a private school. I was in America going to university. This fellow had no schooling. He was from the deep depth of West Virginia, and he was opening my mind in a way that really has happened before. I recognised that this night before Easter was Holy Thursday night, the night of breaking bread. I ate the sandwich. In fact, it was delicious. Now, I've celebrated Holy Thursday in cathedrals, in parishes, over 60 times, well, even more than that, I suppose. Never has the breaking of bread or the sharing of stories or the washing of feet ever felt as powerful. This man opened my mind. This moment sort of lives in my mind every Holy Thursday, I must say. It's the meaning of what Holy Thursday is about. It wasn't in a church, didn't have vestments, didn't have candles, all the singing and stuff. It was in a dark bus bumping along going down to Florida. This gospel is about an event, I think, almost very like this. It's the story of a Canaanite woman. The Canaanites were regarded as the hillbillies of Israel, as the people from, there was a long tradition of antipathy to the Canaanites. And they weren't supposed to real Jews were not supposed to even speak to them. There was this woman who had a daughter who was seriously ill. And Jesus seemed to reject her. And he used that very powerful, very difficult language of not feeding bread to the dogs. But she persisted. And I think, if I can bring those two stories together, she opened his mind in a way that probably doesn't fit our imagination, by the way. We think, well, Jesus was perfect, you know. He understood these things. He's our teacher. Well, he seems to, in this story, be the student, not the teacher. And of course, as soon as you think about it, being human, growing up, we do learn from others. Inevitably. And sometimes the learning is painful or stretchy. And I think this was probably a very good example of that. So, the story of the Canaanite woman is a very powerful story in the Gospel. It leaves you with one question, and this is the final question I want to put to you all. When have you ever had your assumptions widened by a most unlikely experience? Think about it. You don't have to tell me. But think about the people that you've met. Think about the surprise that you've found, perhaps in their humanity, perhaps in the assumptions that we make. We call them prejudice, of course. You know, those sorts of prejudging people in all sorts of ways. And when that surprise happens, they open up our mind, they help us to grow, they help us to, on this journey towards a fuller humanity, it seems to me. And I think that that's what Matthew is trying to suggest to us in this gospel this morning. So take the question seriously. When have you had your mind opened in the most unlikely fashion?